Welcome to We've Been Watching with Claire Woodward and David Stevenson. You might have missed us. We've been absent for 2 weeks, and I was only prodded by a super fan called Dan who said, "Where's the podcast?" So
I can't
Dan,
believe it.
we're
A
back. We're
super
back
fan.
not just for you, but for everybody else. Well, I think everybody else. How are you, Claire?
Very good. I'm now going to call him Dan the super fan. That's fabulous. A super fan. We've got one. I love it. We
Absolutely,
love you.
one super fan and counting. So this week being an interesting, we won't do 2 weeks, we'll do the past week. It's been quite an interesting week, really. A new BBC drama on BBC One, Pursuit of Love. Gods of Snooker on BBC Two on Sunday night. Motherland on BBC Two on Monday night. This show is not sponsored by BBC Two, by the way.
They haven't got the money, have they?
Yeah, Inside Number 9, BBC Two on Monday. And poor old ITV. We've got ITV in there as well with the Brit Awards. A comeback for the Brit Awards on the Tuesday. So Pursuit of Love, I was really looking forward to this, but I was little bit let down as well. What did you think of it?
I feel the same way. I always have problems with these dramas that are clearly set in a period but use contemporary music. I just think why not bring it up to date in the first place? And after 3/4 of an hour, I just thought I'm out on this one. I didn't feel connected to it really.
No, absolutely.
It was just
I didn't either. I think the characters didn't help because the whole thing seems to be about, oh, we're the toffs, we're just lazing around in a stately pile. I mean, we sort of know that, and we're dissolute and we're not really doing anything. So to be a likable character, it's really got to fight through that, hasn't it? And no one really came through that I thought, oh gosh, I'm really interested in what happens to this person.
Yeah, there's nobody you can root for. And I mean, I have to say, I've not read any of Nancy Mitford's books. And I know there's been a lot of talk on social media about how they are more involving and probably more emotional. But this just didn't really connect. It was just unlikable posh people having a super time. And, no, not for me, I have to say. Very glossy and very glam. And when Andrew Scott comes into it, immediately it comes to light.
Yeah, absolutely. He was terrific, and so was Freddie Fox. Actually, I thought Freddie Fox, someone who really knows his way around a big house. I thought really he looked well at home, and also Dominic West. I enjoyed. I mean, what was bizarre for me was I found more sympathy and affinity with, Dominic West's uncle Matthew, who was a bit of a casual racist, wasn't he? Once a Hun, always a Hun, and day goes and the lot.
Yes, with his spectacular Hun killing device on the wall and things like that. I mean, at least you felt something for him. He was a comedy character. But I mean, it was interesting what you said about Freddie Fox, because I think Emily Mortimer, who directed it and wrote it, said she cast all her friends in it, which got my back up a little bit, given that, the BBC is all about involvement and inclusion now. The fact it had lots of very posh dynasties in it kind of got my back up even before I switched on.
Yeah,
that's because I'm just a chippy lefty. But,
not good, is it? Because diversity is all around us at the moment, and that's very good in some respects. And so you expect it to go across the board. You don't expect to have a little coterie of your favored friends and their friends, and some of them completely miscast. I mean, the two mothers were too young to be mothers. I mean, I know things happen, but not so much in the aristocracy for children to be born that young. But that was weird as well. I mean, and the other thing about it was the tone. Everybody looked incredibly self-satisfied. I mean, it's another one of those things where the cast is having a fantastic time, and the poor old viewers sitting there going, what's all this about?
Absolutely. I think the word smug was meant for this series, wasn't it? Everyone was incredibly self-satisfied. You could almost hear, the sort of producers and directors purring with delight as well. And I mean, it's a story that people are continually fascinated with. The Mitfords are continually interesting, but I don't think the story of upper class romance is particularly involving anymore. I think there are better, more contemporary stories to be told in that slot, like the sort of Steve McQueen plays that were on. They were superb works about modern Britain. which had all the diversity in, and they were still involving. And also they were telling us stories that we didn't really know before, whereas this is just posh girls on horses. Wah, wah.
Yeah. And in linen cupboards, I thought, my God, fussing around in a linen cupboard. That was the scene that really wound me up. I mean, God, the linen press, just unbelievable. But the other thing I thought was we're seeing this sort of drama through the lens now of Bridgerton, and what Bridgerton did to the period drama, that, you know, taking a period, redoing it, you know, with this incredible palette of colors, a totally diverse cast. And you're saying, my gosh, look at the energy that production has. I mean, it was lacking a bit of plot for about 5 episodes. Then everybody started having sex, and everybody's like, God, this Bridget is amazing. But, you know, all right, putting the sex and the structure of the narrative aside, it made Pursuit of Love look quite pale by comparison, didn't it?
I think so. I mean, what put me off Bridgerton was what you were saying, you know, all those sort of bright colours. I just thought, oh, you know, Regency women would never have dressed like that, and I just wanted to turn over.
I mean, do you think, I mean, I thought it was interesting that they were crowing the BBC, or certainly there were figures saying that an older audience had picked up on this, which as a contrariness, I'm thinking, oh gosh, that is unusual, but would they really have been aiming for that audience, do you think?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? That Sunday night, you know, sort of classic drama slot, I always think is, I don't know, I think it's a cozy slot, isn't it? It should feel a bit more cozy. I mean, you know, I don't know if I've got a view on that really. No,
No,
I
but
mean,
it seems to be they're all about younger viewers, and next minute they're saying, oh God, isn't it great that older viewers were watching this? But if they're going to do that, I mean, the style of it and the way it was edited with freeze frames, black and white shots will just annoy a lot of older viewers who go, well, I don't really understand. I mean, it's a big turn off. But I think in the end, it probably just barely 3 stars for me. I mean, I don't think I'll come back to it. It's just not funny enough.
it isn't. It's just sort of smug. And I mean, I think, you know, if you're a sort of person that enjoys gossip columns and, you know, in the old fashioned sense about what posh people are doing, you may well enjoy this, but it wasn't for me. And I, you know, even though it's all available on the iPlayer now, I won't be back either.
No, we're closing the door on Pursuit of Love. Pursuit of
Yes,
something else.
the pursuit of love has stopped. Yes.
Yeah, right. Next up is Gods of Snooker, which sounds a bit of a dull program, but actually I found it completely fascinating and really well told documentary. Kicking off with Alex Hurricane Higgins. Are you a snooker fan, Claire?
Yes, of course. I mean, I was kind of brought up on Pot Black in the 70s over here. And what made it such a fascinating documentary was going into the history of snooker on television. You know, how David Attenborough, you know, said, wow, colour television's coming when he was control of BBC Two. Let's make snooker a thing. And, you know, the guy that brought international snooker to Sheffield's Crucible, as well as the Hurricane Higgins stuff. I think it's a fantastic story about sort of, you know, the unsexy side of British sport.
And hasn't the sports documentary come a long way? It used to be that, you know, you'd have a half an hour of a footballer kicking the ball against a post or a back wall, and then and that'd be the end of it. But this was told, you know, like a feature film in a way, wasn't it? Really cleverly done. I was taken in. I didn't know a lot about Alex Higgins. I knew he was a sort of tragic figure in some respects, but this really immediately sort of put you at his sympathy, I thought. And, you know, you were really rooting for him. And then eventually he did have success, but you know, at a cost. I mean, he was a man who had trailed his demons, didn't he? That's for sure.
Very much so. I mean, I didn't realise that he was playing, you know, with much older men in snooker clubs when he was a teenager, you know, bunking off school. But, you know, that moment, which they showed on the programme where he brought his baby daughter on when he won the World Championship, is just an iconic moment in sports television, where he's weeping while he's holding his child in his arms. I mean, we'll never see anything like that again, because, you know, the snooker players of this generation, they were rough and ready, weren't they? They weren't media trained like the footballers today. This was naked emotion. It was just a joy to see
No, totally. No one media
Again.
trained, not really caring anyway. They were playing like they were down the local snooker club, weren't they? Really? I mean, I thought it was great, and I love the outfits. That was, dressing up in those sort of dinner suits with sort of, you know, frilly collars and everything just made it look like a sort of bad wedding from the 70s. I mean, that was all great
Yeah.
as well. But I was completely taken after the sort of first line that Hurricane Higgins said, you can snub your snooker up your jacksie. I mean, as soon as he said that, I realized he was sort of someone for us, really.
Yeah, you could see there was a man with no sponsorship deal. Um, but that's what made him interesting. I mean, his managers were almost saying he was unmanageable, weren't they? Because he would always just speak his mind. And, he did have an incredibly tragic end. He ended up going back to his roots almost, playing strangers in bars for drink money. It was
Yeah.
tragic.
I think we manage these people better, or they are managed in a way which they weren't then. I mean, and he could have done with a bit of that, but he was married. I mean, he must have had support there. It was just very tragic. It was sort of a Gaza George Best story, wasn't it? I mean, at least we still have Gaza going, but obviously, um,
Very much so.
these people, like any sort of high performing person, needs support, really.
But it was just great to see all the old, surviving snooker players like Cliff Thorburn, still having a laugh and being fun and sort of remembering. I mean, it's great to see Ray Reardon on as well, with his sort of Dracula hair still in place. That was tremendous. But it was a real nostalgia fest for people like me. But I mean, it was just so brilliantly done and so involving and so really human. I thought it
Yeah,
was fantastic. Looking
and
forward to the
very,
next one.
yeah.
4 out of 5 for me.
4 out of 5. Very clever of David Attenborough to sort of think, oh gosh, this will make good TV with color TV. Absolutely brilliant that they did that. And a little bit of steady Eddie Charlton, the Australian player who came along and shockingly won, I think, a couple of times actually. That was brilliant. So we'll be back for more snooker. Fantastic. Next up is Motherland, which has returned for, I think, series 3 at the school gate. And I mean, this is a great program. I mean, our family we're crowd round the
Yeah, series
TV.
3.
Yeah, crowd round the TV in sort of old form here and watch this show. I mean, it's pretty much a gag a line, isn't it?
It is very funny. I mean, I don't have the school gates experience that you do, but do all your kids gather around and watch the types as well, and the parents? Is it a family show?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, obviously, it's not one for the maiden aunt, is it? Because there's a bit of language in it. But I mean, one of our favorite characters is Kevin, the sort of put upon stay-at-home dad that
Oh,
just really can't get
poor
into.
Kevin.
It's poor Kevin. We don't know how to cope with Kevin. I mean, and now his wife. I don't think we've met his wife in it, have we? Or have I missed her?
No, she's one of those great characters that we never see on television, like Maris on Frasier. She's one of those great invisibles. Yeah.
But so we haven't seen her.
And he
It's coming. The marriage is in trouble. So I mean, what I thought was amazing about this episode was the way that in the first episode they introduced a plot of cancer, which, as we know, we once had an idea called "Everybody's Got Cancer" as a sitcom. We thought, you
it's in a hospice, wasn't it? Yeah.
come up with an idea that's in the most bad taste and then let it run. I mean, but that was mentioned that she had cancer, but it was sort of completely as if it was normal for the characters, and they responded to it like that, didn't they?
Yeah, and I always think it's a mark of quality when you get Anthony Head to appear in a sitcom, because he played sort of put upon husband, and he was just so brilliantly dry and brilliantly emotional at the end. But there was other illness in it as well, wasn't there? Because it was almost set up like head lice was used in Motherland, and what they were really talking about was COVID.
I thought that was really clever, wasn't it?
Yeah, they had the 2 podiums at the start, like the government spokesman. They were talking about head lice in school. That was clever.
I mean, there was a lot. I mean, they seem to be shuffling the writers as well. But when I saw the writers, I thought, well, I can't recognise people like Graham Linehan. I don't know whether he's moved into an executive role, or what has happened. But you know, the writing was still absolutely spot on. I mean, I couldn't fault it. I thought it was just so funny, and I think everybody in the house has started binge watching it, except for me, really. You know, because as a as a professional TV watcher, I can't binge. I mean, that's showing favoritism, isn't it?
Absolutely. But as you say, this is a genuinely funny sitcom. You know, it is a laugh, you know, a laugh a lot. And the performers are all so great. You know, I mean, see Anna Maxwell Martin not being horrible in a sort of Line of Duty fashion. You know, she's got a storyline in which her ailing mother has to move in with her. And there was a really touching bit at the end where Anna Maxwell Martin's character was being given a head lice treatment by her mother, and it all looked rather sweet and domestic. And the mother said to her, "Isn't this nice?" And Anna Maxwell Martin said, "No." Oh, it was really bittersweet, and it felt it, despite the jokes, it feels real, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's another case where a really good comedy is better with dealing with drama in a way, or dramatic situations, than an actual drama is. You set out to do a drama like that, it would probably appear incredibly dull. But you know, it reminds me of
Mm.
Frasier, which most of our listeners will have heard of, which often deals with quite serious subjects, you know, as well as completely surreal subjects. And it's funny how really good sitcoms can do that. Funny, peculiar.
And I mean, you know, yeah, and when you've got sort of sitcoms with really strong characters in it, you know, I mean, I love Diane Morgan's character, who's, you know, her ex desperately wants her to get a job, and she turns down a job in a shoe shop because it was
I
originally
love
offered to a
that.
17-year-old who didn't turn up. I mean, God, Diane Morgan, I love, and I think they're currently repeating her little 15-minute sitcom Mandy on BBC Two, which I recommend to anybody as the funniest thing I've seen in years. She is so fabulous. And this week, I think she starts. It involves her giving fish pedicures, and yeah, it just ends in disaster. But she is just terrific,
Yeah.
terrifically dry. What a performer! Brilliant.
Yeah, brilliant. She's the real cornerstone of this drama, isn't it? Or sitcom, isn't she? I
Mm.
mean, no, she's fantastic. I love that series as well. There's a sort of mad Russian boyfriend in there as well in one episode, isn't there?
Oh,
Uh,
it's just tremendous. Yeah, really great.
so 5 stars for that. Absolutely brilliant return for that sitcom. And it was followed, we shall rattle straight on, by Inside Number Nine. Now, I haven't watched a lot of episodes of Inside Number Nine. I drop in and out of it, which I think you can, because it's that sort of thing, isn't it? It's a sort of tales of the unexpected, which this really is, isn't it? I mean, this first one was sort of weird gangsters in Commedia dell'arte mask, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, and it can shift tone so much. You know, I mean, it's one of those series. It's literally hard to define, isn't it? Because it's all over the place. This is one I didn't particularly enjoy because I thought it was incredibly, you know, self-referential. You know, you had, you know, like a crime plot, didn't you, with all these commedia dell'arte characters. But you had people saying things like, oh, you know, a woman would say to a character, "You're not going to die," and the character would say, "How do you know that?" And the woman would say, "Because I accidentally turned over 2 pages of the script at once." And there was a moment where this same character said, "Oh, you know," oh, made a joke, and then they said, "This will go down badly on the cooked and bombed forum." I mean, so I thought, well, maybe that's what they wanted, but I just found it a little bit, I'm going to use the word again, smug.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying. I mean, I quite enjoyed that just because they sort of telegraphed the fact that it was Commedia dell'arte. I mean, I mean, whether people picked up on it or not, I don't know. But I mean, I sort of liked that, and I thought there was a good in joke about Miranda as well, and the way that she turns to the camera all the time. So I thought they were then literally turning the whole thing upside down, inside out, weren't they? Say, well, look, I'm making a joke about Miranda. She does that,
Mm.
talks to the camera, which I used to find incredibly irritating and annoying. But for some reason, I was happy
Yes,
for them to
only
do
Eric
it.
Morecambe should ever do that.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. The great Eric Morecambe. But I did like Gemma Whelan's performance. I thought she was very good. I hadn't seen her in a role like that, and I liked the whole gangster thing. I mean, I just thought, um, it was like Reservoir Dogs meets your worst theatre performance in a way. But I can see how there was a sort of smugness to it, and I suppose they've got to a stage now, I think fifth or sixth series, where they probably do feel quite superior to the whole thing. But I do think it's quite creative as well. It's very creative to turn out a one-off comedy like that and come up with enough ideas. I know in a launch that I saw, they spoke of how they have to look back to make sure they haven't come up with the same ideas. So, but then often these people do just rework the same ideas all the time, and they don't get away with it, but it's still entertaining.
Yeah, and they get a tremendous cast, and it is arguably one of the most creative series on telly, isn't it? Because every episode is so different. Do you remember in the first series they started off with an entirely silent episode about burglars in a big fancy house? I mean, that takes a lot of balls to do something like that. And it would be really nice to see some younger talent coming through and doing something similar. I would just love to see another sketch show on television, a really good one.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a sketch show, just a 30-minute version, isn't it? Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, but I suppose people are not attracted. I mean, if you're a talented comedian now, you look to panel shows, or you look to other places to earn your money rather than doing scripted comedy like this. I mean, if you came up with that sort of scripted, it's difficult to come up with that on paper. To have someone commission it, I would imagine that would be quite a stretch.
Well, and I mean, imagine how expensive you look at something like the Fast Show and all the location filming they did. That must have been incredibly expensive to make. So, in this multi-channel TV world, a panel show costs considerably less to make, which is a shame. I mean, I'd love to see something like John Finnemore's show come from the radio to TV, but I'm not holding my breath.
That is a shame, but I'm going to give it 4 stars. You're probably going to give it less, aren't you? I think
I'm going to give it 3 because I just found it all a bit. But I will watch the next one because that's it's like a box of chocolates, as Forrest Gump said. You never know what you're going to get with Inside Number 9.
Right, let's move on to the Brits, which returned, albeit with a smaller audience of key workers, and it was great to see an audience at something, if nothing else. And again, hosted by Jack Whitehall, who was again in terrific form. I mean, I don't recognise 99% of the artists. I'm sure you probably know. You're a bit more music-led than I am.
No. I mean, frankly, until I watched the Brits, I thought Arlo Parks was a housing estate. So,
It probably will be.
It will be now. But after seeing it, I'm a fan. And I think this is, one of the reasons I miss pop music from television. Saw Arlo Parks, thought she was great. And I knew I liked The Weeknd, and I liked The Weeknd a bit more. And I knew of Young Blood, and I knew about him. And then I got to watch Elton John and Ollie Alexander. I thought it was a great show, and I didn't genuinely expect to enjoy it. But I did.
I think what was good about it as well was the fact the atmosphere was a little bit more low key, so it didn't get all sort of crazy. I mean, never went really proper crazy. It hasn't done that for years, where people have stormed the stage or done really sort of wacky.
No Jarvis Cocker moments, no.
But otherwise, I thought that helped it. I mean, everyone's having a great old time, but we didn't have all the tables full of record executives, or whatever you call them now, all sitting there. I mean, again, the theme this week has been smugness with things. I mean, that is incredibly smug, having tables full of corporate executives going, "Oh, thank you very much." I mean, if you didn't have them in tables, I don't think it'd be such an issue. But so the overall tone was better, and I think Whitehall was able to sort of exploit that a little bit. I did love his line about the O2, which has been as empty as Piers Morgan's diary. I thought that was very good.
And I just thought it was very interesting the way he was pointing out that the winners of the international artist categories never turn up for the awards. They always send a filmed message. And I mean, we do understand this year, but I thought Good point, well made. Standing up for the audience, Mr. Whitehall. I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the bit where he brought the sea shanty fellas on. I thought that was very funny.
Right. The other thing I
so
thought, the other thing which was interesting was a bit of a shout out to Little Mix. There you are, who won their award, which had never been won by a female group before. I mean, that was absolutely staggering, wasn't it? I just thought that can't be right, but it absolutely was.
yeah, lots of top young female performers, which is very, very gratifying to see. I think and obviously the tabloids love it because they all look fantastic, but it's great to see so many young women doing well and being awarded for it as well. But it was an enjoyable show, and I mean, it's one of those things that can go either way, isn't it? The Brit Awards, but I thought it was a good one this year, and given everything that the industry's been through, both television and music, I think well done to all concerned.
We're ending on a shockingly positive note for the Brit Awards at ITV.
Who's thought? But yeah, I'd give that 4 out of 5, definitely a solid 4.
Definitely, and I mean, I do find it quite amusing the way they have those grime artists on there, and in fact, a lot of it is sort of muted out with audio muted all the time, which I think is a good name. Which I think is a good name for an ITV breakthrough artist.
Fantastic! Yeah, it could be the new art. It's new Arlo Parks. Yeah, audio muted, brilliant.
Anyway, that's us for this week. Anything to add? I did watch a little bit of Lovejoy, which has gone on to the drama channel. And I was looking at it and thinking, God, it was incredibly violent. I thought, Lovejoy being violent. We have really sensitized ourselves since then.
Oh, we like that. Oh, I love Ian McShane. I think that's fantastic. I mean, the thing I watched yesterday was I binge watched Holston on Netflix, the series of the fashion designer starring Ewan McGregor, and I found it absolutely enjoyable. Typical Ryan Murphy, looks amazingly glossy and glamorous, but I found this less camp and irritating than a lot of his work, which, given it's about an American fashion designer, is quite surprising. But I think it's well worth a few hours, and each episode is only 30 minutes long.
Oh, wow, that's great. That's great. Plenty of time to go to the fridge then. Excellent.
Absolutely, lots of fridge grazing, but yeah, very good, very enjoyable.
All right, until next time. Thank you, Claire.